Thank you very much to Christine and Bob and Carol and Dave for being here and leading us in worship today. If you had been in worship the last few weeks, you may have been one of those who filled out a ballot and picked or helped pick one or more of the hymns that we have sung today. And I would like to thank you if you are. If you have not been here over the last few weeks, we had set aside this day, as we have also set aside Sunday, August 20th, to sing as many of your favorite hymn choices as we can. And so this is kind of neat with all the singing. The Psalm 121 paraphrase, "Unto the Hills." I have sung that before, but I don't think I've ever picked it for worship. And I really enjoyed singing that and being sort of reacquainted with it. So thank you to those folks who suggested that hymn. And so on this special hymn sing Sunday, to also have the leadership not only of Sarah, but of our brass quartet is a particularly special occasion. The famous Church of England minister, John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist movement out of which the life of this congregation came, once wrote, "Sing lustily and with good courage." Ever since the time of John Wesley, this founder of the Methodist movement, and his brother Charles Wesley, who was a great hymn writer, congregational singing has been a vitally important part of the stream of the Christian tradition in which we find ourselves. We perhaps take it for granted. But congregational singing, such as we enjoy, is not practiced in exactly the same way throughout the Christian church or throughout the history of the Christian tradition. We can know this sort of instinctively when we realize those moments when congregational singing seems odd or old-fashioned or even completely out of date. We sometimes feel this way because congregational singing is somewhat unique to our tradition. Why is it that we sing hymns together? Well, one reason is that hymn singing teaches us about the Christian faith and about the stories of the Bible. We opened our worship this morning with a classic hymn, "Holy, Holy, Holy, Lord God Almighty." And I suspect that many of us, for example, know what we know about God as Trinity, God as three persons, from the words of that hymn, which say, God in three persons, blessed Trinity, which are repeated in the hymn. And so we learn about the Trinity from a hymn such as that. We will sing, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." Where else do many of us learn about the concept of God's grace? That it is God who first loves us. That it is God who gives us the gift of our salvation. A God whose action and love initiate the relationship which we enjoy with God. We will sing one of my favorite hymns, "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah." And as you sing the words of that wonderful hymn, notice how in the first stanza the hymn writer puts in a poetic form the story of the exodus of the Hebrew peoples from Egypt, and how at the end of the first stanza, the line is repeated, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Then in the third stanza, the theme shifts somewhat. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Death of death and hell's destruction, land me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. And the hymn writer has shifted from the story of retelling the exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt and interpreted that story in light of the salvation which is offered in Jesus Christ. And the journey of the Israelites through the wilderness becomes a metaphor for our journey through life. And as the Israelites looked to the promised land, so too do we look forward to our eternity with God in heaven. And this teaches us something about how the Bible has been interpreted through the centuries of the Christian church. So hymns teach us. Hymns also help us to build community with one another. We stand or sometimes sit, and we join our voices together, and our voices become as one. If you're as poor a singer as I am, this is a particular blessing. Our voices become joined with those voices that are stronger. But together, whether we are stronger or weaker singers, we become part of a group and a team effort. We build a community with one another. When I was a theological student, I attended a seminary or a divinity school, which was part of a larger university, and a university which still retained its Christian identity. And it was my analysis of the student body of this university that about 1/3 of the students were committed and practicing Christians. About 1/3 were kind of cultural Christians, Christmas and Easter type of Christians, and about 1/3 were completely secular. But because of the Christian orientation of the university, all of the students, whatever their faith perspective, were required each term to attend a certain number of theological events or chapel services or something like that. And on one occasion, I went to attend a lecture by a famous Old Testament scholar from another university. And there were a number of people at the lecture like me who were interested in what the lecturer was going to share. But there were a number of undergraduate students who were there because they had to be, and they had to make sure that their name was on the attendance list. And I remember very fondly how the event was opened with a hymn. And so we were invited to stand there in the lecture hall and sing a hymn. Perhaps it was Great is Thy Faithfulness or something like that. And a number of the undergraduate students, those who were not of the Christian faith, just sort of sat there. And I remember, as I said, quite fondly, that some of us did stand and sing. And because not everyone was singing, we became quite conscious of the fact that we were together forming a community, and we shared a bond as we joined our voices together in worship. Lastly, I think, and most importantly, we sing as a congregation because it gives God glory. There's a sense in which worship is always unnecessary or superfluous. Surely the God who could form creation does not need us or need our praise. And yet, in grace, God has created us and empowered us to worship. God has invited us into and enabled our relationships with God through the act of praise. And so however and whenever and whatever we sing together is used to glorify God. I'll close with these words of Wesley. Above all, sing spiritually. Have an eye to God in every word you sing. Aim at pleasing God more than yourself or any other creature. In order to do this, attend strictly to the sense of what you sing, and see that your heart is not carried away with the sound, but rather offered to God continually. So shall your singing be such as the Lord will approve here and reward you when he cometh in the clouds of heaven. Thanks and praise to God. Amen.